Well, guys, we have a lot of fun topics to address here. And I want to ask the question because I feel like we're kind of on this anyway, right? Are Marvel figures boring now? And the reason I say that is because the MCU is in a very interesting place right now. There are a lot of not so great films. Guardians of the Galaxy film 3 delivered a lot of what we hoped Marvel had been delivering all along and that they would continue delivering. However, they have not been over the last several films been delivering what most people have wanted, right? So, I want to ask the question, are Marvel figures a little bit boring to people? Because really, I feel like, and I ran a poll, and we'll talk about this in another topic. People seem to be all about that Star Wars life right now. So I'm just going to give an example here of a figure, right? This is not MCU, but it is Marvel. Before, and I will show some data here to kind of back up why this topic is important. Before, Marvel has always been king as far as I've been collecting Hot Toys. Marvel has been king shit. They've been the ones that have been appreciating in value. Hot Toys have made more of them. They've just been the king, right? And now it's appearing that people care a little bit more about Star Wars, which we'll talk about, despite Star Wars delivering also some so-so quality, depending upon who you ask, and depending upon what property. But I also want to pull up something else here that I want to show you guys. I've been tracking, I'll bring it up to 200% here, or 150. I've been tracking the releases and announcements for Hot Toys in 2023 thus far. And that said, you can see here that there's a significant amount of Marvel, and Star Wars is pretty close. You can see here there have been in releases so far 11 Marvel, 9 Star Wars, and 4 DC. Then we got announcements 11 Marvel, 9 Star Wars, and 4 DC. And I think that should be all correct. So Hot Toys is almost has a formula here or something. I'm not sure. Like, it's starting to make sense that there's something going on here. Nonetheless, Marvel is still leading the pack in terms of releases and announcements, but people seem more excited about Star Wars, at least in the US, at least. So, Kiko, I want to ask you, are Marvel figures boring now post Endgame?
100% they are, because there's nothing to be invested in at this point. I actually read something on Reddit today, and I almost agree with it, because I have you've seen what I represent with my Marvel shelves and everything. I am into it. I'm a huge Marvel fan. But I really think that they did themselves a disservice by going too fast, too hard right after Endgame and just continuing the story. I saw something that they said, Marvel would have been better off if they took 4 years, essentially, let's say 3 years, just took some time off and reset to get people eager and excited to see what was next. Build up some anticipation. Maybe drop a Disney Plus show or whatever. I mean, granted, I understand the pandemic messed up all that stuff and they had to change their plans. I get that. But wouldn't it be great if the first Marvel movie after a couple years had this giant buildup and this giant groundswell, much like The Force Awakens, where people just flocked to the theater to say, I can't wait to see what is next. Tony is gone. What's going on with Cap? All that's, where do we go from here? Introduce the next big bad, essentially. People would have been so excited for that. But rushing it out the door with half-assed shows that really didn't honestly tick any boxes for a lot of people. And yes, Wanda honk right here. I loved WandaVision. I love Doctor Strange too. And I felt like they were really onto something. The first 5 episodes of WandaVision, when it's still doing the you have to, I assume most people here have probably watched that. When they're doing the TV network and you're trying to figure out what is happening, and then they finally break it, and they're like, hey, this is in Wanda's head. She's doing all this. That was really compelling. And then after that, they really lost a lot of momentum, I feel, because the show ended kind of odd. Then the next movie didn't hit. Then the next show was odd. Moon Knight was a miss. Captain and the Winter Soldier was a miss. She-Hulk was a miss. Ms. Marvel, people liked it, I guess, but it's not like anyone's rushing out. Oh, I can't wait to see what Kamala Khan is up to next. And I feel like at this point, I know I'm rambling a little bit. I feel like at this point of the first 10 years, we had made it through the Winter Soldier at this point. We've been through Iron Man 2. We've kind of started to see the things start to move a little bit, and stakes were being made. While there were stakes in phase 1, all I'm seeing are mistakes now. Because how do you like that? Because when I saw Thor Love and Thunder, that's what I thought was going to kick off, like, all right, Marvel's back. And it just was a wet fart that sucked. And you had goats yelling and things like that. And I'm like, Taika, what are you doing, bro? And then I was like, thank God this dude is not doing a Star Wars movie anytime soon right now, because I think his own hubris destroyed this thing. Because what is interesting is that Thor Love and Thunder is the only one that he had full creative control on. And I think that's a problem because no one checked him. Same thing happened on a multitude of films that you can see. Once the writer gets full creative control, things fall apart. But all that to say, are Marvel figures boring right now? Yes, because the films are boring. Did anybody rushing out to, I think it said, oh, She-Hulk is low stock. And everyone's like, oh no. Anyway, because that's the way it is. That's the way it is. No one cares. And everyone's like, well, you don't understand, We just had Guardians 3. Yes, people are saying this is the best since Endgame or whatever it may be. But it's still trailing at the box office as opposed to Guardians 2. And everyone's like, well, people don't want to go to the movies anymore. Oh, yeah, tell that to Top Gun Maverick and tell that to Avatar 2 because they just made billions of dollars. So people still want to go to the theater. They just don't want to go to the theaters to see this shit.
Well, Kiko, what about this? And I really like the show. Loki.
I forgot about Loki. I forgot about it.
But again, this went to waitlist, right? Did anyone say shit about it? Like everyone was just like, oh, okay. Anyway, right? The only film, Kiko, and look, as much as I love Shang-Chi, people loved it, but it didn't kill it at the box office, right? What did kill it at the box office was No Way Home. That's pretty much the only line I think that Marvel has going right now.
But why did that? Because it was just a nostalgia candy film. Right. Because everyone's like, "Ooh, I want to go back and see Toby. I want to go see Andrew." It's not because of, wow, that was a groundbreaking story. That really moved me. Not a single person said that.
Right. Well, I thought it was pretty good, but
it's a fun movie to watch, but because of nostalgia. If you took out all the nostalgia and the other Spider-Man were just random guys, and it wasn't Willem Dafoe and I forget the actor's name who plays Doc Ock, like
Alfred Molina.
Yeah,
Alfred Molina. Thank you. It would be an okay movie. Like, oh, that was pretty cool, but the nostalgia factor kicks it up fucking tenfold. Like, holy shit! Like that was fucking like seeing them all together like amplifies it by a ton. But yeah, I completely agree with Kiko. I think he's fucking nailed the segment. It's nothing. It's almost like every show or movie that comes out is like trying to move the goalposts, but it's just not. And it's like we're like stagnant. And like all these shows and movies have come out, and it's like where are we even? What is kind of happening here? And people just aren't excited.
Well, Dean, maybe it's a matter of kind of like Graham pointed out in the chat here that Endgame and Infinity War did kind of spoil us. I mean, that was such a good run, and it was so well put together.
It took them 10 years to get there.
Right.
But like Kiko said, at this point in the first 10 years, I mean, you have banger films, and I think Guardians, I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things, and like you said, the Spider-Man, and as far as we know, there's no more Spider-Man. What's his name said he was kind of done playing Spider-Man for a while, so, and that's a Sony movie. It's not even a fucking Disney MCU movie, so
right.
It's like the future's so uncertain and unclear. No one saw fucking Ant-Man 2, and Kang was set up in the Loki show, and then this movie came out. Like it's like, is he the next big bad? I don't know. I haven't even seen that fucking movie. It's like I could not be bothered to go see it, which is sad because I really love Paul Rudd. I like Ant-Man, but it's
right.
Like the motivation to keep going back to the theater to watch these movies after the horrible shows that we've been getting. It's
I feel like it shouldn't be that way, because I know the question is, are the figures boring now? Like at this point, they're adapting more comic looking, costumes. So they should be exciting figures to the degree to where like, wow, I grew up with this reading these, when I was a kid, and now here it is in the live screen. Because if you think about what the iterations of these characters look like 15 years ago, they were very down to earth and very, somewhat alien, Loki and such. But you had, it felt real. It felt very grounded. Now it's opened up the bright colors and the exaggerated costumes and different things like that. And so they should, if they were telling proper stories and made proper decisions, you should be getting hype about all these things. And It's just not there, man. It's just
Well,
not.
I think what's happened, guys, is that the whole universe has become a little bit complicated and convoluted because it's like, oh, well, that Kang is around, but then there's that Kang, and then there's this other Kang in this other universe, and it becomes so like complicated. Like, I can't imagine trying to follow this shit as a casual fan. Like, if I was just a casual person watching these films here and there, I could be like, dude, because I heard stories this where, you know, with the post-credit scene at the end of Ant-Man, it's not really a spoiler, but there's a Loki season 2 post-credit scene, and someone in the audience said, Loki's alive? Like, and that's the point, right? And there's so many things like that there's multiple Lokis and there's multiple whatevers, and like that's, you know, that's what eventually, like, book it. That's what they're going to do with Iron Man and Captain America eventually. Like, that's
Yeah.
it's just a matter of time when Steve Rogers shows back up and Tony Stark shows back up. It just
Yes,
right,
even in the Doctor Strange movie, you had Captain Carter.
right, yep.
You had to watch the fucking show. Like, what the fuck? I mean,
And the
I guess that
Ultron
movie,
sentries and stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
it was like-
I guess that movie kind of does good enough to explain that multiverse, but like, it kind of comes out of left field. It's like,
But
wait,
Star Wars is getting dangerously close to doing the exact same shit. And I hope they
Right.
learn from, because when they did Mando season 3, they're like, well, didn't you see all the shit from Book of Boba Fett and all that? No, you shouldn't have to. And everyone's like, well, didn't you see that from Bad Batch and Clone Wars? You shouldn't have. I mean, granted, I watch all this stuff. I'm the consume guy, but you shouldn't have to watch any of those things. The things that made the first 10 years great about Marvel is that you could literally walk into it, understand that there was a linear story going on, but you didn't have to see 50 shows and 14 movies to understand what was happening. Sometimes it's just one little bit of dialogue that gives you a real quick summary, you know, exposition, and then you're right back in it.
right.
They're making it way too complicated.
But look at this, guys. Like, you know, this is the bestsellers list on Sideshow, right? Like, look at the Groot is the only one, really. I mean, like, there's Rocket because he's new, and so is Groot, right? Because people are on the Guardians hype. But look at the rest of it. There's Toby and Lizard Base, but it's like all Star Wars. I mean, and a little bit of DC sprinkled in. Like, where's the Marvel shit is like way down here. Like, I mean, yeah, it's mostly Star Wars. So, but what's interesting, I don't want to spoil that, but go ahead, Dean. We'll talk more about Star Wars. But what were you going to say?
Well, I was gonna say he brought up a good point when he was talking about Winter Soldier, because Winter Soldier, if you just watch that movie, it's a very self-contained story.
Right.
And then once you get to like Civil War, it's kind of like when it starts paying off. But you could literally just watch Civil War and pick up on what was happening, like who Bucky is, where he was at, what the whole situation is with his assassinations and stuff. But now, like Kiko said, you have to watch everything else to know who came from what it's referencing when. It's not self-contained stories anymore. It's all interconnected, which can be okay, but you need to take the time to, you know, establish that. So again, it's no fault of Hot Toys, right? They're just making figures that, you know, the properties.
Right.
And they are kind of boring now. Not any fault of Hot Toys again, but yeah, it's just kind of like, I'm not even motivated to watch these things, much less spend $300 on them.
Well, and that's I think what's happening a little bit, Dean. So I mean, look, and again, I want to say, like, I'm about to review this figure, and I've talked to Kiko about this. Carnage is a work of fucking art. Carnage is, I think, maybe the best Hot Toy I've ever held in hand. Like, it is legitimately that good. So as far as boring, he's not at all boring. What were you saying, Dean?
High praise.
Dude, I'm just telling you, bro. He's almost 18 inches tall. He's fucking huge. He comes with a ton of accessories, and he just looks amazing. Like, Venom looks great. I love my Venom. Carnage is a better figure. Carnage is just, and I know Kiko would agree, having it in hand. So it's not so much boring in that respect, but I do feel like maybe the emotional connection that we had to these characters before, for these Marvel characters, it's not quite happening, and that's not leading, it feels like, to as much excitement about Marvel figures compared to Star Wars. Which we're going to talk about that, but I don't want to spoil that. But yeah, I don't know. Carnage is just amazing. So guys, I would, you know, I'm going to review him soon. He's, you know, I already filmed the unboxing, but yeah, I would highly recommend him. That said, guys, I want to move us on to our next topic, because I want to ask the question here.